快消市场首次紧缩，中共内循环经济遭遇危机。中共党媒报道，中芯国际联手国家队斥资500亿投建芯片项目，刚被美国制裁，又开始忽悠投资者。中共党媒报道，原材料价格疯涨，经济停滞与通货膨胀同时来袭。CCP 宣传中惨居中的华为却变身东方不败。辉瑞疫苗再次验证难服其实。胡锡进打脸充胖，厚颜无耻，称华为要被历史记住至少1000年。山西省吕梁孝义县工业园发电厂浓烟滚滚，中共政府熟视无睹，农民燃烧秸秆却被抓受罚。
中国出了个习大大，唱。中国出了个习大大，国家的劳动力大大，
现在一个月多少钱？
一边是中共大肆鼓吹的脱贫的光鲜亮丽，一边是农村代课教师薪资低薄、民生多艰的真实现状。
23年了，
早上先把这个饭放好了，才去上课，上课到9点半，所以说人均作息。
坦率讲，就是美国战略界对中国的重视程度超过中国知识界。这个现象在过去10年都有。我在好多地方讲过，世界上最真诚认为中国崛起了是美国的精英层，最否定中国崛起了是中国这帮傻公子。现在基本情况大家都是这样就是战略层面美国就是把我们当对手这个改不了，不会因为这个政权的更替而改变。第二个观点呢，就是战术层面，它还是会带来一些变化，而且是好的变化，我们要珍惜比如说刚才几个我的学长都讲了，可预期性、专业性，就他的团队会有分寸一点，是吧？这个人交往一定得有分寸。像老特就有毛病，上来就打脸了。那么另一帮老兄就是拜登的团队会有专业性、分寸感会好一点。所以呢，我个人估计这个气氛会好很多。那么我们就抓住这个机会，而且中国方面可以很肯定地讲对中美关系的重视远远超过美国对中美关系的重视。我们中国的态度，我觉得应该是讲很珍惜的就是很好的，基本上就是只要有1%改善中美关系的机会，中国方面会付出努力。我们希望这个努力能成功。
印度经济时报12月2日报道，印度官方表示，
粮食危机愈演愈烈，中共一反常态，大量进口印度大米。
印度贸易商已签订合同，将从12月至2月出口10万吨碎米，每吨约300美元。这种印度碎米1吨300美元，不到2000人民币，大约合到1块钱人民币1斤。印媒报道称，印度是世界上最大的大米出口国，而中国是最大的大米进口国。中国每年进口约400万吨大米，但以质量问题为由，一直避免从印度采购。虽然印度经济时报称，原因是世界粮食市场供应紧张，同时印度出价大幅打折。但是某些印度媒体很难理解，中国人为什么突然变了口味，不嫌弃印度大米口感又粗又硬呢？是否蕴含更深层的难言之隐呢？印度报道称，中国利用边境紧张局势转移人们对农业危机的注意力。印度的经济学家注意到一个有趣的趋势，中国与世界多个国家接连签署了粮食和食品协议，大多数协议都涉及到大量的食品交易。中国还与竞争对手美国签署了协议，尽管在过去几年里，中国一直是最大的大豆生产国，但今年他计划从主要竞争对手美国进口4000万吨大豆，这反映出中国可能正在经历一场重大的粮食危机。报道还引用中国海关总署的数据，今年上半年，中国粮食进口增加了22.7%，粮食进口达到7451万吨。印度报道强调，中国食品价格在2020年7月上涨了13.2%，从谷物到肉制品，普通中国人日常消费的大部分食品都出现了价格飙升。中国的国家统计局透露， 需求量最大的猪肉价格上涨了86%。中国正在积极地从世界各地进口食品，从中国采购几乎所有主要食品这一事实，可以理解这种危急情况。
CCP 灭活疫苗即将上市，或将造成次生灾难，再次危害世界。
我们也看到，我们国家最新的进展的话，之前呢，这已经有6个灭活疫苗全球我们国家肯定在这地方占绝对优势，1-2周就会有比较大的消息公布出来。计划在今年年底之前要有6个亿的灭活疫苗准备好了，准备上了。
中共洗脑教育荼毒香港少年。
今天咧就好開心咧，喺我哋嘅禮堂會進行憲法日嘅升旗禮。
胡锡進惡語相對美國議員。假冒境外媒体谴責美國嚴控中共黨員赴美 ，CCP 媒體就是假新聞的發源地。環球網依然罔顧事實，稱拜登黑川普。討共合圍之勢建成，澳江城美重要基地。中共處處挨打，德國以國家安全為由叫停中企收購。中共恐嚇台灣，轉嫁國內外矛盾。面對滅亡的命運，中共媒體仍口出狂言，做着一統台灣的千秋大夢。
Internal documents now prove that Chinese officials knew they were facing a coronavirus pandemic, something they'd never seen before, but they hid that information from the world and they arrested those who tried to report it. More critically, millions of people continue to travel through the city of Wuhan in central China, the epicenter of the pandemic. Then more than 1 million Chinese citizens flew here to the United States, more than 1 million. It wasn't until January 20th that the president of China, Xi Jinping, finally admitted the virus could be contagious. It could spread from person to person. Now, what is that? At best, it's criminal negligence. At worst, it's something like mass murder. But no, said the World Health Organization. In fact, it was just more evidence that the Chinese Communist Party was doing an extraordinary job managing the pandemic. And the American media heartily agreed. That's the message from our media. It's the message from our health establishment. It's the message from our elected officials. And it has been for almost a year. But it's not the whole story. We know that now. We're still not even close to knowing what really happened. We should find out.
Outside the Capitol, where the House Freedom Caucus held a news conference demanding Attorney General William Barr provide the American people with full transparency into the allegations of election fraud here in 2020.
In our roles, in the oversight capacities that we have here in Congress, but also the Department of Justice and certainly the media, to look into these allegations, to really give it the effort that it's worth.
You know, I agree with my colleagues to say where there's smoke, there's fire. You have to start somewhere. And there's credible evidence, there's credible testimony that there are problems here.
We're coming down to the wire. And we have not had a proper job done by the Department of Justice and certainly not by the FBI.
We have an election in Georgia next month. We need to know right now whether we can trust it. We call on the Attorney General to get in there, do a forensic audit, find the evidence, and let us know if this has been a fair election.
Wednesday, from the Lansing, Michigan GOP headquarters, Trump lead attorney Rudy Giuliani gave a legal briefing with Michigan's GOP chair, Laura Cox, on the issue of illegal ballots that have corrupted Michigan's election.
Unfortunately and tragically, we're living through, I believe, the worst voter fraud scandal in the history of our country. I can't think in American history of a voter fraud scandal, at least that we knew about or was uncovered, of this dimension. It is not in one state, it's not in 2 states, not in 3. It's in approximately 7 or 8 very carefully selected places. Carefully selected because most of the skullduggery, most of the fraud, most of the false ballots, most of the intimidation, most of the phony ballots that are printed are done in cities where Democrats are dictators, where Democrats own the city.
Just the day prior, the Michigan Senate Oversight Committee hosted a 7-hour hearing for dozens of witnesses who came forward testifying to election irregularities they had witnessed in their districts. Wednesday's 6 p.m. hearing adds to their testimony. Rudy Giuliani and a lineup of expert witnesses who have each testified to irregularities found in Dominion voting systems and extensive data analysis. The key difference between the Arizona and Michigan GOP is that Michigan GOP leadership is supportive of the efforts to investigate election irregularity and have the majority power to act. But Arizona GOP leadership in the House and Senate leans more on the John McCain and Joe Biden scale and are dragging their feet despite widespread pressure from their constituents. The Trump legal team's big ask of the Michigan leadership is to formally investigate voting irregularities and to simply cast out illegal ballots, a game-changing move in the fight for election integrity.
President Trump also fighting the tech titans of Silicon Valley today. The president said it straightforwardly, that he will veto a new Defense Authorization Act unless Section 230 is terminated. In a tweet, the president said this, quote, "For purposes of national security, Section 230 must immediately be terminated." Section 230 is the liability shield that exists for no one other than technology and social media companies like Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and Google. In order to have those protections, social media sites must act as a neutral platform. That is Twitter, Facebook, Google, others doing no such thing. In fact, doing the opposite, blacklisting and censoring conservative voices, censoring even the President of the United States with impunity, also hiding disparaging news about Democrats, blocking users from seeing information about voter fraud all across the country. President Trump's call for immediate termination of 230 is, in my opinion, the only way this country can be saved from the technology and social media oligarchs and the left that they control. But weak-kneed rhinos in Congress have already begun to pitch moderation and compromise. These are rhinos. They are absolutely irresponsible mouthpieces for those tech titans who are censoring the President of the United States, killing the voices of conservatives across the country. You may be wondering why we don't bring many senators on this broadcast very often. In fact, it's rare that we do. And it's because mostly they have nothing good to say, nothing compelling. They also seemingly never get anything done.
So you testified earlier this week in Arizona about election fraud. Do you think this matter will ultimately be decided by the Supreme Court, or will it be up to state legislators to take control here if they don't feel that the final vote tallies are legitimate?
Well, the problem with most of the state legislators, whether they're Democrats or Republican, in my opinion, when you start looking at the data and the analysis that I've done now in Arizona, in Michigan, and in Georgia, where we also filed an affidavit, in Massachusetts, where we found in my own election these serious anomalies. So what you find is there is a feature in these voting systems called the weighted race feature. Both of the establishment parties, the GOP establishment and the Democrat establishment, have all been profiting from this weighted race feature. And, to your earlier point, I don't think any of them, whether it's the state legislators, particularly in a place like Michigan, you have to understand the state legislators don't really, in some ways, don't care what is happening with the president because they're running their own little operations in those states. So as long as they can maintain power, they don't really care whether Trump wins or loses, or in many ways, they will actually cut the president short and sell out their own interests, or sell out, for their own interests to Biden. And I think that's when we look at what happened in Michigan and Arizona and in Georgia, you find that the GOP establishment, in my opinion, because as you go high Republican, you get low Trump. So the data and the signals to me say that this was not just done by one party, there was a collusion of both parties against President Trump.
Welcome back to the War Room. We're going to go to Pennsylvania. Thomas King III, General Counsel of the Republican Party up there, and also part of the Amistad Project. He's the lead attorney in this suit that was filed. So, Thomas, we had you on to break the news last night, kind of hurried. Want to take a few minutes and we'll go through this. Walk us through the lawsuit. Why did you guys bring it now, and what's the basis of it?
Well, thanks, Steve. The gist of this lawsuit is that the governor's been in a big hurry up here. We have a tyrant by the name of Tom Wolf, who's the governor of Pennsylvania. He's been in a big rush to certify the election. He's working in cahoots with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, which would be the equivalent of our Secretary of State. Her name is Kathy Bachvar. She's hooked up with an organization that donates to Rock the Vote. They let Rock the Vote come in and actually access the election system in Pennsylvania. So they're tied. They can register people directly onto the state system in Pennsylvania. It's outrageous. So this lawsuit is an attempt on our part to stop the certification of this election by Wolf, and also to undo the certification that he's given to the 18 Democrat electors in Pennsylvania. So we sued the governor, the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and all 18 of their delegates to the Electoral College. We're asking a court to mandamus him, or to order him to reverse himself with regard to the certification of this election. There is absolutely no way that the governor is in a position in this state to certify this election with everything that's going on, including, and Jack gave a wonderful summary of the testimony of the truck driver, and that I know for a fact that matter is under investigation by various agencies. This driver testified that he hauled in probably upwards of 200,000 ballots into Pennsylvania from Bethpage, New York, on Long Island. These ballots should have never been there. Why they were there is anyone's guess. But the whole thing fits together, Steve, real nicely. We've set it out in the lawsuit. The real the culprits here are David Plouffe and Mark Zuckerberg, and the Amistad Project and the Thomas More Society, thankfully, have devoted just tremendous efforts here. I'm really proud to be part of that with Phil Klein and the Got Freedom folks. And so all of this ties together because the money's coming from Zuckerberg. The money to pay the ballot counters, the money to pay the judges of elections in Philadelphia was paid for by Mark Zuckerberg. How'd you like to live in a state, Steve, where the people counting the votes in Philadelphia are being paid by Mark Zuckerberg? And that's the truth. We got that in documents that were supplied in Judge Braun's courtroom in the federal court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So that's what this lawsuit's about, is to stop this and to stop these people from voting Pennsylvania's electoral votes in the Electoral College. We're filed in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. We've had a couple excellent decisions out of judges in that Commonwealth Court. We're asking for an injunction, and we hope to be successful in stopping this charade of a certification in Pennsylvania. There are hundreds of thousands of votes at stake in Pennsylvania, including whatever in the world these ballots were that were hauled in from Long Island, New York by this very brave truck driver, Mr. Morgan, who put himself at great risk, came forward and did the right thing. Jack gave the right analysis. Morgan is a hero. Morgan is a guy who's telling the truth. Well, you can't fool with Morgan. When you listen to Morgan, he's not going to put up with anybody's nonsense. He knew there was something wrong. They made him sit in a postal facility for 6 hours without unloading him in Harrisburg and sent him to Lancaster with these ballots. The trailer that he used for several weeks before all of a sudden disappears with the ballots on board. So where those ballots ended up is anybody's guess. But remember, in our state, Zuckerberg gave $10 million to Philadelphia. He gave $2 million to Delaware County and money to Montgomery County. And with it, they bought these drop boxes. The greatest part of these drop boxes is there's no security. You could drop whatever you want in these drop boxes because especially in the really great story is in Delaware County, where they had half the drop boxes in the whole state of Pennsylvania with Zuckerberg money bought in Delaware County. Those drop boxes are supposed to be have video security. The great part is the video security they bought was run on solar power, so it didn't work at night. So there's no nighttime video. There's no security. I had to actually intervene for some people in a group called the Watchdogs in Delaware. I had to intervene because the election officials called the police and wanted the police to arrest the people in the Watchdogs who were trailing the people who were collecting the ballots. And I had to actually get on the phone very late at night and intervene with the police and tell them that it would not be a good idea to try to arrest or stop the Watchdogs, because I've represented police departments in court, and I would not be representing them, and they'd be in a lot of trouble if they interfered with these people carrying out their constitutional right to follow the ballots. So that's kind of the overview, Steve, of where we are. We've got a really bad system in Pennsylvania. We've got a broken system in Pennsylvania. We've got some heroes in Pennsylvania like Congressman Mike Kelly, who you know, and State Representative Daryl Metcalf and Russ Diamond. These guys are warriors up here. They're calling for the legislature they're calling for the governor to convene the legislature because it went out of session November 30 and it doesn't go back till January. So they're calling upon him to call for a special session of the legislature, which he undoubtedly will not do. But if he doesn't do that, they're also trying to garner a majority of members in each of the House and Senate, both of which are controlled by Republicans, to call for a special session, which is another provision in our state constitution. So these guys are warriors. They're on it, Steve. They're back in the president.
Thomas, can you hang on for 1 second? I will take a short commercial break.
我们要在全世界上来真正的来改变这些多年来被这些所谓的中立的、公立的、公正的流氓媒体来霸占社会真相，玩弄人民意志，甚至连神都想背叛的啊！我们就是代表外星人啊，代表外星人来执行意志到人间来，必须听人的话，听神的话。必须要消灭魔鬼共产主义，只要你听神的话，只要你与共产党为敌，都是我们朋友。我们不管你什么民主党、共和党，民主党呢，只要是灭共的，我们全采访，全让他上。而且这些平台一定牢牢的在我们爆料革命战友手里面。各地农场的未来得到授权搭建平台，所有资金都是这么出啊！你们负责建团队，负责找主持人。负责在当地上星，全面开始。我们不仅要改变美国，啊，挑战神，啊，认钱为爹的这个整个最危险的时刻，还要改变世界的一切。我们就要全世界认识到，共产主义、共产党是人类的公敌，是上天的公敌，是神的敌人，是神的背叛者。还是母亲、父亲最大的敌人。只要你是爹生、娘生，你就应该知道，共产主义、社会主义就是你敌人。在感恩节的时候，你要知道，只有一个党，它代表着一个国家，强奸了一个国家；只有一个党告诉你，爹亲娘亲不如党亲，一切都是党的，一切都听党的。要把娘和爹彻底消灭，然后他要消灭一切神。一切上天之神啊，他要代表神，他要代表耶稣，他要代表穆罕默德，他要代表释迦牟尼，他要代表大自然的力量，要与天斗与人斗啊，其乐无情。我们的媒体非常直接的告诉全人类，我们就是来消灭共产主义和消灭不信神的这些流氓主义、魔鬼主义。我们要让世界回归到在人间，娘和爹就是你要感恩的，永远要感谢上天、万佛、万神对我们的眷顾和保护啊！这就是我们感恩节的誓言。我们绝不会发个信息就感恩了，我们要行动。今天的感恩节，我们就发起一个最大的行动， 我们要在美国建立起来一个能代表神和真正的相信神的人民的一个声音，叫 GTV America 有线电视台，谁都不靠，就靠我们自己。我们将以爆料革命的新一代和战友们，具有国际知识、国际背景，相信神的人建立这个台。
由于冠状病毒感染激增，威胁了经济复苏，11月美国就业增长放缓。Moderna 首席执行官对2021年生产5亿剂疫苗充满信心。旧金山市市长下令实施新的、更严厉的社会限制新措施。汉莎航空公司的地面员工工会支持削减成本协议。Uber 要求美国疾病预防控制中心考虑使用 Uber 司机分发疫苗。新加坡向 COVAX 捐款500万美元，以帮助较贫困的国家得到疫苗。波音向廉价航空公司瑞安航空再出售75架737 MAX 飞机。美国不会延长剥离 TikTok 的最后期限。
Dear mama, are you okay over there? Your son is crying and missing you, and sees you in his dreams. You sent Jake down to CCP, cause it's God's will, it's God's will. So I'll wait for you, and I'll see you when we get the CCP, yeah. So